Welcome to ACP, the Amazon Connect podcast. This is the show that focuses on Amazon Connect and related technologies. I'm your host, Tom Morgan, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host, AWS Solution Architect and Contact Center Consultant, Alex Baker. We're also joined by John Ing, freelance consultant for Amazon Connect and founder of the independent user group for Amazon Connect. It's time for another ACP. I'm joined in the studio again by Alex. Alex, another week, another episode, another busy couple of days. How are you?
Yeah, we're really getting back into the swing of doing the regular podcasts again, aren't we? Which is nice. Yes, I'm good, thank you. As always, it seems we've got loads going on, loads of exciting conversations around AI agents, outbound campaigns. They're probably top of my mind at the moment, but yeah, all good, thank you.
Definitely. We're also joined today by John Ing, who's a freelance consultant for Amazon Connect and is also the founder of the independent user group for Amazon Connect. John, thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. Yeah, great to be talking to you guys again. And again, great to see you getting the podcasts up and running again. Always good to listen to with a cup of coffee. Yeah, always look forward to them.
Excellent. And the user group is just over 2 years old. So happy birthday for that. I can still remember the first event, the UK event in 2024. I think we interviewed you briefly on episode 12 for that. It's been great to see how that's really grown and evolved over the last 2 years. And I'm sure it's been keeping you busy as well.
But it's blown me away, to be honest. From what I thought would be a relatively slow start build and didn't even know whether it was going to continue beyond the first event, to think here we are. I think we're planning 9 events, 9 and 10. Haven't been to Australia twice, America and stuff like that since. It's incredible. I think it just shows you that there's real value in getting people together to talk about stuff, share, learn from each other and collaborate, which is obviously the underpinning of what the user group's all about.
Well, it's quite a nice, friendly environment for it, isn't it?
That's the idea, yes. Yeah. Try and get people to talk to each other.
It always seems, whenever we've been, that it seems like people feel quite free to chat and have some really valuable conversation at those events.
Great feedback. And again, that was the intent around setting the group up, was how could you get people that have got common challenges, common problems, and hearing firsthand from other people that might have solved the same problem was what this was all about. And I was getting calls from various different organizations saying, we've got this problem, can you give us an idea of how we might want to resolve it? I'm thinking, oh no, an organization's already done that. If I could get you two organizations to talk to each other, wouldn't that be a better idea? And that's where the user group really came from. And it's really good that people do embrace that environment and certainly feel quite happy to share what they're doing and what they're up to. And hopefully that will continue.
Do you think that's been the biggest reason for its success, that kind of consumer-led agenda, if you like, where really be members, not sponsors that drive the topics?
I think so. I'm always learning and trying to get, because it's evolving. It's always evolving. And I think that's the important thing, is that you can't just keep doing the same thing. You've got to try and evolve. But bottom line, I think there's 2 things. One, getting people together to talk and allow them time to talk at an event. You can go to lots of sessions and things like that. You think about the summit in London a few weeks ago, we bumped into each other, managed to speak to each other for about a minute. And then there's another 10, 15,000 people around, There's people there that you tried to meet but couldn't meet because you couldn't find them, type thing. Whereas our events are quite small and therefore you get a chance to talk to each other. I do offer on the agenda plenty of time for people to talk. And I think the independent bit is also quite an attraction for people, because it's not AWS running the event. It's basically the community that drives what the agenda's about.
I think on that, you've although you say, so yeah, AWS aren't running the event, you've had some great buy-in from AWS as well, though, which is good to see. So they've come along and been really interested in hearing some, at times, quite frank and honest feedback from their customers. And it's great to have that buy-in from them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be fantastic. And hopefully, again, that engagement is really important, because as a community, we can create a larger voice. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of events, one in London and one in Melbourne, given what's recently been announced, to get what the census on the ground is around what that really means. And I know we'll come on to that later in the conversation, but that's where the power of that community really comes together, because I think it gives us a bit of a reality check of what organizations think about what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, over the past couple of years, yeah, you really branched out into Australia and also the US. Really interested to get your take, probably as one of the few people that sits in those different communities now. I'd be really interested. What are the differences between the regions when it comes to those kind of connect communities? I know the
To
UK
be
is quite
honest,
strong financial, but is that true everywhere, or is it?
no, it is. Yeah, I was expecting it to be different, but they're not. I think the difference is UK, from a Connect point of view, is a relatively mature market, as is Australia. Some of the very early adopters of Connect were Australia, New Zealand. A number of financial organisations within that region use Connect, some insurance companies and that. So it possibly might be more biased financial services, but the conversations are very similar. Again, they've all got the commonality and the common platform that they're all using, which is the Connect platform. And anything that they're doing with that, you get the same sort of challenges, same sorts of questions and things like that. America is that was a real steep learning curve when we looked to go out to the States. We put a finger in the air. Where do we go? It's such a huge country, and there's huge numbers of users connect out there. And I think it's the size and scale in America that's probably the hardest thing of how you get your voice out there. How do you get people to be aware of what this group exists and stuff like that? And we're working in background to try and grow that. And in some instances, you have to start with something. The AWS adage of think big, start small that's exactly what I've been doing all along. It's just trying to put a finger in the pie, as it were, and just see where it goes. But the Connect conversations are very common, very similar. The amount of advancement and the way that the platform has evolved over time is a common conversation across all regions. Some regions get it slightly earlier than others. That's possibly a difference, but that's driven by AWS, and we understand why that might be. But whether it's how do you use Connect, how do you build flows, who's using Lex, who's using Novasonic, who's using outbound campaign, all of that is very common across all areas, all regions.
Yeah.
Thus far, I might find a region out there that's different, but at the moment, I don't think I have, which really helps from a group perspective, because it means that I can bring some value to that conversation because I've got it from other areas as well. And you can share stories from the UK or Australia with America and vice versa. And I think that helps as well.
That's interesting. I know certainly the UK and I think the Australian sort of communities tend to be quite candid in closed sessions. And I know you run certainly the UK event. I imagine all the events are along sort of Chatham House rules where you've got that sort of level of anonymity. Is the US the same as that? Do they warm up into it? Like it's
incredible. Absolutely. Yeah, we run our first event in San Francisco and we had to tailor the agenda because people wouldn't stop asking questions. Actually, that from I guess a cultural perspective, if I can call it that, is that they were even more forward in their comments and that, which was brilliant.
But you need to spark that conversation, really, don't you? You need people to open up a little bit, and it can sometimes feel, you get that sense sometimes where you get that feeling from companies they don't want to reveal necessarily the problems they're having because everything has to be perfect. But I think when you've got a room of like-minded individuals all trying to solve the same problems, I think it helps to share among friends sometimes.
Indeed. And there's an anecdote, and I will mention it in London because I think it's a real example of why the user group and the way that we run the events is quite powerful, is that we had a guy from an insurance company sitting on one table in the morning. You'll be aware of the way that we do the wedding table arrangements in the morning and we change it in the afternoon and things like that. He was on the table in the morning. He asked a question and nobody knew the answer to his question. He was on a different table with different people in the afternoon. He asked the same question and got an answer. And his feedback for me was, if we hadn't have done that, he would have gone home without an answer for something he was really keen to get an answer to. But he got the answer. In fact, he got more information than he was expecting. So that, just the way that we run the events as well, helps people get exposure and get the ability to talk to. I try and make it so they can talk to as many different people from different organizations as I can.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's scope for further expansion in the Americas in particular? Because you said what an enormous region and country it is. Any plans for like Canada or Central America, Latin America?
Yeah, Canada is growing his interest. There's a few organizations in Canada that have shown interest, and I'm in conversations with them. America, back to the America piece, is that there are clusters within the United States, which we've started to identify. So I'm just trying to work through how to run events in multiple different cities But from a UK point of view, people travelling across the UK to London seems to be okay because people do it almost as part of their jobs regularly. Traveling across the US is not something they would normally do. So, you've got clusters in, obviously you've got New York, heavily financial services, etc. I've got to say California, because actually they're more spread in California than I had initially learned. So that's something that we're working on. Is there other areas in California that would work as well? Then you've got places in Texas and stuff like that, which was a bit of a surprise. So some clusters down there. And then you've got, I'll call it Middle America around Chicago area, but it's a bit broader than just Chicago, but Chicago would probably be a hub. So, that's something we're working on at the moment is, would that work? Do we need to tailor the events? Because they might be slightly smaller in number, but nonetheless, you've still got these clusters of people that are very keen to get involved.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, as you grow, obviously there's a challenge for you as an organizer to find partners and sponsors to help move it along and help it to grow. How do you keep that sort of editorial independence as it grows? And also not so much partners, but also, as we're going to talk about, actually, as AWS start to get a little bit more interested maybe than they have been in the past about Connect.
Yeah, obviously I couldn't do anything without the support sponsorships I've get, and obviously Cloud Interactive have been a very good supporter of the events. I am trying to work through, as it's grown, and it's probably grown faster than I ever expected, is there a different model there somewhere? So I'm working on, I'm open to ideas. So if anybody's, you or anybody listening to this has got any ideas what I could do, then please let me know, because it is about trying to build a more sustainable model. I am aware there are other user groups out, particularly in the CCAS arena, and that will have annual subscriptions and things like that. I really don't want to go down that road. I think that makes it harder and it creates a friction for people to want to attend. So I need to try and keep it so that people can attend free of charge. Again, to run events costs money, and therefore just trying to work out, is there a slightly different model to do in that? Why keeping the core tenets of what the user group's about being independent, people feeling comfortable in the environments that they're talking and things like that. Watch this space, I guess, is what we'll see. I think as we move from 2026 into 2027, I probably need to try and solve that problem. So it's something I'm working on.
Yeah, I always thought it must be a tough balance for you to get the right balance of a few partners there to support the event, but not overly, so they're not outnumbering the customers that are there more for the general discussion and the learning. You don't want it to be too overtly salesy.
Yeah, and that's probably the key thing. But again, I do value, and one of the things which has been quite interesting, which I hadn't anticipated because I thought that 2 years going on, you'd still be doing what we're doing, is that people move jobs. They might stay in the same arena, I see, Amazon Connect, but they might move from a customer of Connect to a partner of Connect, or vice versa. Should you exclude them from the community? I don't want to, because they've got something to contribute. So it's about, how do you balance that? Because you want people that have got experience and knowledge and can contribute to the conversation, to share, provide opportunities for people to learn from them. The fact that they might be now working for somebody different, does that change the dynamic? I'm hoping not. And therefore, it's more about what that person can contribute to the conversation, necessarily from where they are. Obviously, the consumers of Connect are the lifeblood of what we're doing, is what it's all about. One of the other things I'm keen, and I think you mentioned in your other podcast about the NLX acquisition from AWS, about the skills shortage and things like that. Yeah. Again, having people in a room that have got some experience and knowledge is really helpful for that broader community. So we just have to see, and I'll take feedback as it goes. But the idea being is that I try and limit the number of, let's call them, sessions where people present from a company perspective, but doesn't necessarily mean you can't have people sitting in the room that have got something to contribute at a more individual level.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And it'd be really interesting to see how that evolves. We couldn't have you here and not talk about the recent Connect rebranding story. I think I'd be really interested to get your sort of take on it. It caught us probably a little bit by surprise. I'm not sure we were expecting it, but get your initial take on it. And then if you've had any feedback from members and the community on the announcement, what does that look like? Is it exciting? Is it confusing? Is it annoying?
It's all of that, I think, Tom. Yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around it. Materially, has it changed anything? I'm not so sure. However, is this something that's a bit more strategic than we currently don't understand? So one thing I think AWS, certainly based on my experience over the last 8 or so years, is that they do seem to have good people that work on strategy. And we've got this ongoing conversation within the user group, which I've called, is it evolution or revolution within the CCaaS market? Yeah. This is another example of just another piece that's pointing to a revolution. And what do I mean by that is that I've been involved in contact centers for more years than I can care to recall. But in the most case, for most majority of that time, it's been the same players just evolving their own products. And you've still got the same thing today. You've got CCaaS vendors that are now AI CCaaS vendors. Yeah. They spent 25, 30 years being a CCaaS vendor. They're now an AI CCaaS vendor. Yeah. But I think what you're starting to see different players come into this space. And I do think, and this is just my opinion, and I'm more than happy to be proved wrong, and I may be well off into the sunset before it really does change, is that the CCaaS market, as we've known for a long time, is significantly changing. And I think this might be where AWS are coming from, is because it's not a contact center anymore. It's about how people interact to get stuff done. And I think it's more that play, and it's more a broader AWS position than just Amazon Connect. I would not be surprised. And again, I think they need to keep the Amazon Connect name because there's customers that are bought into it and been bought into it for a number of years, and they're still working on Lex IVRs. Yeah. Many customers that might, and again, this is another thing I think AWS are doing, is that they're also broadening the appeal and where they might get more market penetration, is that actually it doesn't have to be a CCaaS that now buys Connect. It could be lots of different types of organizations that might want to use that technology because it can help solve that. And I think that's possibly where some of this is coming from as well. But keeping the brand name Amazon Connect because it's well recognized, it's in the Gartner Magic Quadrant and all that. So if they change the name too much, then does it mean it starts again? And therefore this is something there. But I've looked at what I've seen so far. Materially, I've not seen any major difference in Connect as a platform. We're going to have the conversations at the event. So I've had a few people call me and say, what do I make of this? And I've shared what I've just shared with you. At the moment, I'm still trying to get my head around it. I think materially it hasn't changed anything other than potentially it's a step to where it's going next.
It's a strategy, long-term strategy play. Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good opportunity as well, though, because I think it shows how seriously AWS are taking this thing that we call Connect, but in their minds, like you say, might be an implementation of a bigger strategy. And it feels like it's no longer just that CCaaS team in the corner in AWS somewhere. It's part of something much bigger. Do you see the user group staying in Connect Customer or kind of evolving out, maybe sub user groups? Have you thought about
yes,
that?
it's a good question. I don't know. I've at this point in time, my immediate think is the customer, because we've got users on Connect that have been on Connect for a number of years, yeah, and therefore they know Amazon Connect. They're still trying to get their head around it's now a new name, which is not unusual, right? AWS do change the names of their services on a reasonably frequent basis, so we shouldn't be surprised to some extent. But yeah, what I'm interested in is, does this change how organizations can use and leverage the platform to provide that customer experience that they're trying to deliver? And yeah, I think looking further afield, it probably will. But yeah, I'm really interested to get that discussion going about, as it changes. It's this time last year when they introduced the AI pricing bundle, what did that really mean? And again, I think we're starting to see that actually that was part of this, probably a longer term strategy as well. It's about building
don't make me decide, don't make me choose which AI features I should lean into. I want them all. Yeah, like the strategy is all of them.
It's quite interesting as well. We've heard on a couple of occasions now people in AWS mentioning that if you wanted to, you don't need to have contact center agents. You could, maybe that sort of plays into the longer term move towards it being an agentic AI suite of products. Is that in theory you could have AI agents running your contact center for you if you wanted to.
Yeah, not just your contact center, right? Your business. I think that's the bigger. Yeah, I think that's probably the bigger AWS play when they say that. That's what they. What about those places where there isn't a customer involved, where it's internal business processes and all the rest of it?
But I think we need to balance. There's the typical technology hype curve going on here as well, isn't there? So much as it's exciting, it's phenomenal what's going on at this point in time. I'm just about to relaunch the website for the user group. Yeah. And that website has been built by me. I'm not a developer by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been using AI to build it for me. as a bit of a
Yeah.
test case, and it's incredible what you can do. Absolutely phenomenal. So we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, oh, that's a really good point, actually, because a couple of years ago, that first UK event, I think agentic AI was talked about. I can't remember if that was when we had a really rough demo. It wasn't even in Connect. It was like, it was either that one or the next one. Is this is going to be the technology, and I can run it out of this console terminal, and you have to wait a bit whilst I dance around before I got it working. But now we're at GA, and so where do you think people out in the real world are on this sort of maturity curve? Because as partners, obviously, we find it really interesting. As technologists, we find it really exciting. What are people doing? Are they still experimenting with it? Are they bleeding? Are they recalibrating?
I'm seeing a lot of experimentation and testing, proof of concepts. That type of terminology is being used. Personally, I'm not aware of much in production. I think there's still the risk that what could this do? How do you control it? How do you observe it? How do you make sure it's doing all the right things? How do you test it? I think organizations still need to think about all of that. And the tools and technologies that are available to help you do that you're starting to see more of that, because I think people are beginning to realize that's going to be a key part in this, is how do you police the robots, as it were.
Yeah, it's that confidence, isn't it? Of, you're letting it loose with your customers. Yeah.
And I think that's still a conversation that a lot of organizations, particularly in the enterprise world, whereas reputations could be damaged overnight by something going wrong. Wouldn't want to be the person to do that, would you really? But I think the pace that this technology is maturing is just incredible. Even over the last 12 months, it's just incredible. What looked like a bit of you to go back to the demos that you were trying to pull together, you can now do that very simply now. How organizations adjust to that, I don't know. I think there's a lot of internal conversations that need to happen, because that has organizational design implications from an organization perspective. Yeah. Obviously, if you're sitting at the top of the organization, that might be positive because it might reduce your costs, but it's not as simple as that, I don't think. I think, lots of people playing. One of the things we do at the user group, we do an update to what we call the community success wall. That'll be interesting to see if we get some items on there at the next event of where people have actually done a bit more than they were doing. So that'll be interesting to see.
Definitely.
But I thought it was interesting around the NLX acquisition that part of the press release was around releasing that bottleneck of engineering when implementing AI agents as well. So it'd be interesting to see if you get any feedback around that as that acquisition matures from the user group members, that they are able to more quickly put AI agents into action in production.
I think that's really interesting, because I think there's been a common thread through all the user group conversations about, and I'm a big advocate of this, much as I'm from a technology background and understand change management and all that sort of stuff, that the nearer you can get the changes made to the colleague and customer, the faster, the better. Yeah. So I think some of this is driving in that direction. We did have conversations a number of events ago about how can just make some of the changes within the Connect platform. And you've got the technology people going, no, you can't do that. That's dangerous. You might break it. But businesses tend to update websites these days. Yeah. Because they need to do the pace, there needs to be changed at a pace. And I think Connect has always had that in mind about making it simple to use, make it simple to deploy. And that's part of its power. I know it's a much more complex beast now than it was when it first came out, but anything you can do to make it easier to deploy, easier to build, then it's more likely to get consumed. And I think that's a positive.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to talk about the next event that you've got coming up, which is in London on the 3rd of June. So by the time you listen to this, you will still have time to register. It's free to attend, is that correct?
Correct, yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Free to attend, but you do need to register. tacug.org to register. If someone's listening to this and they're on the fence about whether to come or not, what would you say to them?
I think what have you got to lose? I think if you've got any questions that you want, and that goes for anybody that's using Connect or thinking about using Connect. We've had a few people turn up that are not users of Connect, that are thinking about it or just about to start a journey on Connect. And they found it extremely valuable because it's given them an opportunity to talk to a number of different people with different perspectives, different experiences, and therefore they get a much broader perspective on how that might feed and help them going forwards. I think the information that's shared is relevant and would be of interest to people in the Amazon Connect community world. You get an opportunity to network, build relationships. And one of the things that I hoped for, which is definitely happening, is conversations happening outside the user group. So I do know that there are people talking to each other. I get many people come to me say, look, we heard from someone, can you put us in touch with them? We'd love to have a conversation with them, or we're changing what we're doing. I heard somebody talk about this at the last event. Can you put us in touch with that? And that's consumer and consumers talking to each other. You've got partners and consumers talking to each other, but also got partners and partners talking to each other. I know in Australia, there's a couple of partners that were working on a joint bid for a business, for an opportunity, which they wouldn't have done without the user group. So depending on where you sit, I think you get fed well.
Good lunch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Always good food, I think. Venues, I think, are a good locality, easy to get to. The challenge is that spaces are limited. You have to register. It's not a turn up on the door type of event. And places are filling fast. That's probably one of the biggest differences, is that the fact that the UK is more mature than the others, then there is a quick uptake of people wanting to come and join again. We're not quite full yet. So, really keen to hear from particularly people that have not been before, to bring in some different perspectives, and that'd be really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. It's a fantastic community. So do look into it if you are using Connect, or even if you're considering using Connect. And yes, go to the website to register. If it is full, then keep an eye out for the next one. Yeah, just by the time this goes out, there might be space, there might not be, because as you say, spaces are limited, and I think it has to be like that, really. Otherwise, you've got all the logistics and challenges around rooms and spaces and all that sort of stuff that goes into running an event. But no, it's a fantastic community. So
thank you. And again, part of that is you keep it relatively small so people can have a conversation. If it gets too big, then that becomes harder and harder to control.
You lose some of the magic. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a sweet spot of numbers. We tend to get about 50 people, 55 people, which is a good number to have that type of conversation.
Yeah, definitely. It's an intimate, open book conversation as well, and people can be honest with each other, definitely. All right, we could carry on talking all day, but it is time to bring this episode to an end. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, John. And thank you all for listening. Be sure to subscribe in your favourite podcast player. That way you won't miss the next episode. Whilst you're there, we'd love it if you would rate and review us. If you have colleagues that you think would benefit from this content, please let them know. To find out more about how Cloud Interact can help you on your contact center journey, visit cloudinteract.io. We're wrapping this call up now, and we'll connect with you next time.